Welcome to Informatica Cloud 101 on-demand course. In this module, you will learn how you can augment your data by performing field lookups in data synchronization tasks. After completing this module, you will be able to explain the purpose of a field lookup, understand how to create a task with a field lookup. A lookup can retrieve information from any Salesforce object, database table, or flat file. This is something that is available in the data synchronization service. Basically, what it does is, it goes out and retrieves information based on lookup conditions that you define. Note that these objects do not have to be in the same connection as the source or target for the task. So to help get you thinking about what you might use a lookup in a task, let's look at a few business scenarios. The first scenario is when you have missing or inaccurate data in your source. So here is a sample row of data from my source. Notice that there is no value in the state field. However, I do have a zip code. Assuming that the value in the zip code field is accurate and that I have a resource, such as a table or file of zip codes and their associated states, as shown here, I can perform a lookup into that resource using the value in the zip field. When the data synchronization service writes the record to the target, it inserts a return value that I defined. So in this case, the value Texas is returned to the state field in my target. Another example that is very common when you're doing data integration work is looking up for an ID for integration purposes. In an earlier module, we brought a list of contacts into Salesforce with a predefined relationship between the contact and the account object, due to the foreign key in the source contact record. It was very easy to do that using the Related Objects feature. Because of that existing relationship between contacts and accounts. In real-world scenario, it is not always going to be the case that I have the foreign key. But I do have here for each contact record is the company name. So what you can do when you insert those accounts in Salesforce is get the account ID by doing a lookup using the company name. When the task runs, the lookup searches the target system for a match. And when it finds one, it returns the ID. Then when the row is written to the target, matching ID is written into the account ID field. This is how the relationship is created between the contact and the account in the target system. In defining a lookup, there are 3 steps. In the first step, you should select the connection and object that you want to do the lookup on. This does not need to be a source or target connection. It could be a third connection. You would then select the lookup fields in your source that you want to compare. The last step is to select the return value. This is the value that is returned when the lookup finds a match. You must also configure how the service will handle multiple return values. The service can randomly choose a value or return an error. When the lookup returns an error, the service writes the row to the error rows field. There are a few rules and guidelines for lookup. If you're doing a lookup on a flat file, it does not need to be a comma delimited flat file. Also, if you're doing a lookup on a flat file, you must ensure that the agent has access or the proper permissions to the directory where the file is located. In general, we advise that you minimize the number of lookups that you put in a task, because lookups are a little more labor-intensive. Also keep in mind that the source field and lookup field in the lookup condition must have compatible data types. From a best practices standpoint, if you're doing a lookup on Salesforce, then note that Salesforce does limit the number of API calls that you can make within a 24-hour period. It is a really high number, and it is based on the addition of Salesforce you have. However, for large tasks, say you're loading 1,000,000 rows of data, and if you have a lookup, and you're doing that lookup on Salesforce, then that's 1,000,000 API calls. It can slow down job performance because it is making web service calls every time. When we recommend in terms of best practices is that you export just the lookup and return values to a flat file. You can use a data replication service to do that. We will cover data replication in a separate module. So you would just export the lookup and return value to a flat file. Then you would perform a lookup on the flat file as opposed to performing the lookup in Salesforce. So that's going to eliminate those API calls in Salesforce. And it is going to return a lot faster because it is local to the agent. The last step would be to add the data replication task that creates the flat file and the data synchronization task that performs the lookup in a task flow. Task flows allow you to run multiple tasks in a designated order. Task flows will also be discussed in a separate module. I will now demonstrate creating a data synchronization task that uses the company name in the import file to look up an account in Salesforce and return the Salesforce ID, so the contact can be related to the correct account. In this demo, we will create a lookup in the synchronization task. Log in to the Informatica Intelligent Cloud Services and select the Data Integration Service. Click New on the navigation pane to create a new asset. To create a new synchronization task, select Synchronization Task option and click the Create button. In the task name field, enter the name and retain the default location. From the Task Operation drop-down, select Upsert and click Next. From the Connection drop-down, select the local CSV file connection and select contact2.csv from the Object drop-down. Click Next to specify the target information. From the Connection drop-down, select the Salesforce connection, and from the Target Object drop-down, click Contact. Go to the Field Mapping step and map all the fields, except the Account Name field by dragging them from the source to the target. Click the Add or Edit Lookup icon on the target field account ID. From the Connection drop-down, select the Salesforce connection, and from the Object list, select Account. Specify the lookup fields as shown on the screen. In the Lookup Return Value section, from the Object field drop-down, select Account ID and click OK. Click Validate to validate the mapping. As the mapping is valid, click Finish to save and close the Synchronization Task wizard. Now run the synchronization task. To examine the result, go to the local CSV file directory. Open the contacts2.csv file. We will search for one of the contacts in salesforce.com. We see that the contact is present and related to the appropriate account. This concludes the demo. There are a couple of labs for this module. In the first lab, you will load contact data from a flat file into Salesforce. To associate these contacts with the current account in Salesforce, you will use a lookup in your task. Then there is a bonus lab, where you will look up state information using the zip code. This concludes Module 8. This module showed you how to use a field lookup in a task and create a task with a field lookup.